So download product maintainer.zip from Blackboard under weekly learning. Unzip it. Unzip it and open it in Windows 27. Right, so I repeat, what I'm doing today, plus what you did on files last week, should be your main criteria to prepare for the final exam when you come back after the Christmas break, right? So it will be a practical exam. Of course, there will be a very, I'm not looking for a grand interface, but you'll have to build something small in the sense that, like, something to show or whatever, right? And then there will be something that has to do with how to build classes in C#, and very simple. I'll keep it very simple because I can only do simple in one class, and files. What I'm doing with the other section, I'm going to do more because I see them Thursday. They have an extra class. I will be doing extra work with them, but definitely that will not be on the exam. So whatever I do with you is what will be in the exam. I won't ask too much, but you're most welcome to come to the Thursday class if you want, or watch its video afterwards if you have time, but whatever works for you.
So I'm in practical.
Yes.
And we can use whatever we have.
Exactly. You can use, like it is always practical. You can use the examples we've done in class. You can use the assignments. And of course your own laptop, but no internet access, right? So you won't have any internet access, and it will be monitored. If I feel the need that you need to go to the MSDN site for something, I don't think so. I'll keep away from it, but if it is, then I'll let you access that, okay? So all you have to do is just practically, if you've been sound throughout the semester, you've been attending classes, doing your assignments, listening to me or whatever, I think you should be okay. So it will be a practical exam. Your class kind of went 50-50 last time, but the other section, they all wanted a practical exam. So I have to go with that. I wish I could give everybody the option of doing whatever, but I can't do that because they're very different, right? They're two different things altogether. What you do in a multiple choice is very different from how you do a practical exam. Okay. So what we did after the strike is what you will pay attention. You did this, you did arrays, but it's not big, like I'm not going to ask something very big of you, but as I said, files is absolutely new that you haven't even done an assignment on, you know what I mean? Not practical. So I did files last week, I'm going to repeat them again today. And since you have seen files twice now, and I do classes today in their simplest forms, you're already doing Java, you're in your third semester, doing your advanced Java, so classes should not be tough to pick up. There are many things that are extra in C#, but as I said, time limiting, I can do them. So I won't ask more than, but whatever I do in class, I can ask whatever I'm doing in class, okay? So what we are doing today, basically, I've created a small, it's incomplete, but I've created a small project for you. It has two forms. One is called form main and one is called the form new product. So basically it is maintaining, I'm trying to maintain an inventory, right? And so I have an inventory in which I can add a new product. I can delete a product. I should be able to also modify a product, but I've kept it out because then there's more to do in files. But you could modify a product, maybe change the description of a product or change the price of a product, which is very common, right? So I have an inventory. My inventory is in a file. So in a file, I'll keep information about products, and each product will have a code, will have some description, and will have a price. So every product is an object that consists of a code, a description, and a price. So I'll need a class to kind of create a product. So there is where I'll use a class, okay? And then the file contains one per record. Every record is for one product. So every record will have three parts to it: the code of the product, the description of the product, and the price of the product, right? And I have a huge file in which I keep all my inventory information. Of course, that's not the only way of doing it. A better way would be to create a database and tables, because it's huge, right? But it's just a small business, so the guy is okay with using files. And you should be able to read from the files, populate this list of products, and then if I wanted to delete something, I would choose it from here and delete it, press the delete, and the product is gone from my inventory. I should be able to add a new product, and when I click on the add product, a new product form will come up, and I can give information of my product here. It will be validated in the sense this must be a string, this must be a string, this must be a decimal number. I'll show you how to do validation in a separate class today, and then you can use that class in whatever project you like. If you want to save it, click the save button. If you want to cancel it, cancel the cancel button, right? And then once I do save, it will go back to the main form and it will appear here in the list. When I'm done and I'm exiting, I'm done, I'm finished. Or even in the save, I think I'll just do it in the save, then it's easy. Every time I save here, I save it in my file. So every time I read from the file, though it's not the best way of doing it, it's better that you had a save button here, where kind of when you exit or whatever, you say save all my contents, right? And while you're working with it, only what comes in the list is the most recent one. That could have been done. There's nothing wrong in it. But I've chosen to, whenever I click on save, all my products again are saved on the file. And every time I come back to the form, they're loaded again. But as I said, it's not necessary. It's not even efficient doing it every time. So I'm not sure what I did at the end, but hopefully I've done an efficient program, right? So those are the two forms. None of their code exists right now. I haven't written code for add product, for delete product, or even for how to save or cancel. So the forms are ready, right? The forms are just self-explanatory. I've just done simple, whatever we've been doing till now. Oh, which I forget. I haven't given. Please see that you have shorthand keys for all your inputs. So C is already taken. So I'll do an code shorthand key. Description D shorthand key. Hopefully I've done my tab. If not, I'll double check that. And then price P is a shorthand key. So your inputs should have shorthand keys, not your outputs. Now there is no output on this form, but why do you need shorthand keys? You need shorthand keys so that you can use your keyboard, right? Now in an output field, what will you do with your keyboard? Nothing. It's only in inputs that you do something. You want to input something into that text field. So let's double check that the tab order is correct. So let's look at the tab order, which isn't correct at all. So we'll go 0, we'll go 1, we'll go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. The rest really don't matter, but of course they shouldn't. So now 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 will go in the tab order that I want. And the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is necessary so that the shorthand key works with the text box. Otherwise it does not. So many of it is created, but it is not operational. So it's useless. So you have to make it operational. So every time I go Alt, it should take me to the code field. Every time I go Alt D, it should take me to the description field and so on. So the tab order is set now. I'm not sure if I did it here. It isn't very important, but everything should be done correctly. So let's see if I've set the tab order. So 0, 1, 2, yeah, we are good here. These are the only 3 buttons that I'm going to work with. So 0, 1, 2 are perfectly fine. The list products, I should be able to choose something from the list so that I can delete it. So therefore it appears like I should be able to work with it. Let's see if there is a property that I should not be able to add to it. I'm not so sure. I haven't looked at it, but I can. Okay, so the 2 forms are ready. Now the things that I want to do. The first thing I want to do is I want to create a product class. So I've already given you a product db.cs. We'll come to it when I need it. Okay, it has some code in it, how to work with files. Shouldn't be a big deal, but we'll come back to it. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create a product class. And as you see, each product has a code, a description, and a price that tells you the attributes of the class. They're called fields, or instance variables we call them in Java. In C# we call them fields. We'll write a class as we do, and as I write it, I'll tell you things that are different in C# than in Java that you can do in Java. C# came later than Java, so anytime something comes later, it is a better design. You know what I mean? Like cars that are new are a better design than, so they learn from their previous mistakes. So you will see some neat things in C#. I'm not sure how much Rich has done. I'm sure he's used classes, because without that, how will you go on? For me, it was more forms, so I was away from classes, but definitely I always do classes at the end of the semester. So I chose to do it. I'll bring out the few things that I can't in today's class, but as I said, I will be doing more on Thursday, and you're most welcome to come and attend that class if you want, in the same room from 11 to 2. So I'm hoping I can do some stuff with them. God knows who will turn up. Anyway, so my first job is to create a class called product. Okay, so there are a few ways you can do it. You can always go from project. You can say add a class from here. You can always go here and do right click and say add from here. Right, so I'm adding a class, whatever works. It's the same thing. I mean, they come to the same menu. So I'm going to add a class. Okay, so if you notice, since I said add a class, the class is already chosen by default. Okay. I'll also put this on GitHub, but right now you're just starting, so it's also on Blackboard. So I create a class. Class names in C# use the Pascal naming convention. You start with a capital letter like you do in Java. So I'm going to call this class product. And don't forget the extension .cs for C#. Okay. So now we are creating a class. A class is a description of what is contained and what can it do. So it's just a definition. Okay, we all know that class is just a definition. To use a class, you create objects of that class, and every object has its own instance variables, and all objects use the common methods that are common to all objects, right? So I'm creating a product class here. So do an add, and that will be added to your Solution Explorer here. The first thing that I have noticed that it doesn't have the public specifier with it, and it does create problems because public means it can be used by other classes, and if I don't, then it doesn't work, right? So the template that is created by C# is missing the word public. Please pay attention that you add it by yourself afterwards, right? So I just didn't think about it. I thought it was creating a template, and I got an error somewhere else, which was not very helpful, but I figured out what it meant. So classes must be public. Now, classes can be private, which really doesn't make a lot of sense. Classes can be public, but classes, you can also make classes only be accessible inside the project, right? Like, what do you call it in Java? Protected, right? Not necessarily protected. Protected has another use also. You can use it in the children classes also. So protected is more, but protected does work that you can only use it within the project. And if you wanted to do that, instead of public, I would use internal in my C#. We've done internal before. I have, when you were doing multi-forms, I've used internal there, right? So I'll keep it public. And now my aim is to define my class. So as I said, in C#, they're called fields instead of instance variables. Not a big deal. It's just what they are. I don't know, maybe just to kind of keep it separate. And I'll kind of try to follow whatever I've done in the other section. I don't want to do less or more because from the exam point of view. Okay. So as you saw, I need 3 fields. I need the code, I need the description, and I need the price. Keeping in design of object-oriented principles, my data should be private and my methods should be public. So I'll keep my data private, and saying that I'll use the private keyword with all my instance variables. Again, you only declare those fields as class variables that basically are how an object is identified. So for a student, you would say name, maybe student number, maybe his or semester number. If you were to use something like maybe calculate the average marks of a student or whatever, or maybe use an index variable, you won't declare it at the class level. Don't do that, right? So till now, we were talking about module level variables and local variables. Now we start calling them class variables because you're creating a class. So on the class level, you only declare those variables or fields that tell you what does the object look like, right? So how do I look and what can I do is a class definition. So don't declare your I, J's, index variables here and any local variables that you need temporarily inside a method. Don't do that. It's not correct. It's not the way how you do it. So only the instance variables of an object or of a class are created here. Something that identifies a object. Okay. So as I said, with the student, the name of the student, the student ID, maybe the semester number he's or she is in, or the college in Ontario, whatever. But that's how you are identifying a student. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to create some low class variables, and because I've already shown you the form, there is a field called code, right? And fields follow the same as Java naming convention. You follow camel case convention for fields, right? A description. Forgot my type. And my price, which I'll take to be a decimal. Right? I won't take price to be an integer. Prices are always, most of the time, integers, real numbers. Okay, so I've taken it to be decimal. And again, come on. And all my 3 variables are private. Okay, so here are my three. Now you can define them in one line. Code and description can go in one line by the comma, and in C# it's no big deal. In Java, we do them on different lines, and it's a convention, right? It's just a convention. Because I'm in the habit of doing Java, I've written them in separate lines. But you could even, in Java, we never do it, but here you can even do something like this. If it was something that you wanted to initialize, you could do it right here, which is wrong because it's a string. Again, that's not common in Java. You never initialize your instance variables like this in Java. You don't do it. So good habits should remain. Doesn't matter what language it is, we'll keep with our good habits. All variables, instance variables, should be initialized in the constructor. That's where they should be initialized. That's the use of the constructor. Okay, so now let's write constructors. Now, since we know a little bit of constructors, constructors are public, have no return types, have the same name as the name of the class. Now, if you wanted to write a default, if you don't want to write a constructor, good enough. There is a default constructor that is available that takes no parameter and initializes your instance variables to default values. What are the default values? All objects to null, numbers to 0, Boolean values to false. What else remains? That's it, right? So all numbers will become 0, all objects will become null, and the Boolean variable is false by default. So if you don't want to write a constructor, perfectly fine. You can still create objects of this class. By default, all of them will have null, null, and 0.0 in their instance variables. That's how they look. If you want to create your own one, you can create a default. Now, as soon as you create your own one, then you'll have to put the empty one yourself. So I'm going to create 2 of them because I want to create another one. So if you don't want the default, you don't have to write the default. This is just for your information, nothing else. So I will write a constructor that will take 3 inputs. And remember, we've talked about parameters already before. We've talked about value parameters. We talked about default parameters. We've talked about all this. So all that still holds in a class. You can say, oh, the code will always be 1, 2, 3, which is wrong because codes are not the same for every product. But maybe you'll say, oh, the price default, if you don't give me a price, I'll take the price to be $100 or $10. You know what I mean? So you can always use default parameters like you've learned in one class I did before. Sometime, I can't remember which class now, but I've already done it. So you could have default parameters. So I'm going to take a string, I'm going to take a description, and I'm going to take a price. Again, the names of the parameters have not to be the same as the name of the instance variables, but again, same as Java. There's no hard and fast rule that they have to be called the same. Calling them same just makes it easy to think of less names, but you have to remember, then you have to use this reserved word whenever you're talking about the instance variable, and when you're talking about the local variable, you don't use this. Okay. Now, a little different from how it was, though you can do it exactly like Java. You can write your getters and setters like you do in Java, but there is a different way of also doing it in C#. So you could have a set price method, a set code method, and a set description method. You could have get code, get description, get price like you do it in Java. Nothing stops you. Nothing at all. It can be written. They're just methods. Getters and setters are just methods, nothing else. But in C#, there is a quicker way of doing it. And now that we are writing our own classes, please see that you have your XML, Java doc, not Java doc, C# comments in every method should have it. So what does this do? This constructor creates an object with defined values. Not defined, you can say past values, but it's defined. Now, what does this one do? This constructor will create an object. It does. I mean, there's no doubt about it, with default values. And what are the default values? The default values are null, null, and 0. Right? So as I said, you don't have to, but as soon as if you want one, then you have to define it. If you don't want to define any of these, that's perfectly fine. Then there is already a default one. But if you define your own and you still need the default one, then you'll have to put it yourself. Okay. So as soon as you start defining your own non-default constructors, if you need the default constructor, you will have to write it yourself. If you don't care at all, you don't have any constructors, then all this is not needed at all. But I do need my constructor. So to write the getters and setters, you can exactly do like what you do in Java. You can write your get and set. They are just methods, nothing else. But C# allows you to write getters and setters in a more concise manner, and they're called properties. So I'll kind of stick with C#. I'll compare it with Java, but I'll try to use C# in its own right, right? So what is a property in C#? A property in C# comes in 3 flavors: get set both. So it's basically defining the getter and the setter method for your instance variables. That's what a property is. Okay, that's what a property is. So a property defines the get and the set methods for instance variables. They're called properties in C#. How do you define them? This is how you define them. Properties will be public. Of course, if you don't want them to be public, you say, I don't want a setter or a getter, or I only want set that is private. It can all be done. So I'm going to define a public property one by one for each of them for the code first. So you know what, I'll write it and then I'll kind of write my 3 triple comments and it will come. I don't have to write them myself. Okay. Okay, so now this property, the type of the property is same as the type of the variable whose property it matches. So code will have a string property, description will have a string property, and price will have a decimal property. So it matches the type. So that string is coming from whatever, the type of the variable. Now it's basically taken, like you can assume it, that's how it works. The property of the variable has the same name as the name of the variable, just with a capital letter. So code is still called code, but notice how I use a capital C in my property. Okay, this automatically is a property for the code description, the code instance variables, by virtue of that code that you've written in caps, starts with a capital C. Now, in its easiest form, I'm just writing code has both a getter and a setter. So I'm going to write my get method first, and I'm going to write my set method. And that's how they're written. So the get method starts with the word get, and that's the body of the get. The set method starts with the word set, and that's the body of set. If you don't have to do anything extra in get, there are different ways of doing it. But what will it return? It will return the value of code. That's a getter. That's how you write your getters. Same way I'm writing it here, right? In the set, you'll say there are no parameters. Where are the parameters of my property? I mean, I didn't write any parameters. There was no parameter list at all. Now, when you set an instance variable, you usually pass the value that you want to set it to initialize. But in C#, what you do is you simply say this, and I'll show you how it works. You take your variable and to it give the reserved word value. And I'll tell you how this works. Where is the magic in it, right? There is no value as a parameter here. The code property does not have a parameter list at all. So what are you initializing code to? What are you assigning? What is this value? I'll show you how it works. Give me a minute. Okay. That is a property for your code. What am I missing? One bracket somewhere, seems like. Yeah, I'm okay now, right? That is an example of a property. A property can have both the get and the set methods. A property can only have a get method, then it is called a read-only property. You can only return a value. A property can have only a set method, then it is called a write-only property. So there is no getter, there is a setter. So it's the same thing. You may have getters and setters. You may only have getters. You may only have setters. Okay. Now, when you do setter, you can make this as private. Then it cannot be set from outside. You can only set it from inside, which is just writing a method that will do validation or whatever. Now, for whatever reason, like in Java, if you want to do any validation, you will do it here, right here. So suppose I wanted to say something like if. So you're saying that whatever you provide me, it's called values. If its length is equal to 4, I'm good. Or if it is not equal to 4, I mean, I'm assuming that you're doing one of those. So I'm saying if it is not equal to 4, just because the code is already written, I'm going to throw an exception. And I'll throw the argument exception just because it's a good name. It kind of tells me that something is wrong with the argument. Which argument? The value that is being set. Code has to be of length 4. I'm using 4 as a magic number. Please bear with me. As I said today, okay, so here it will say that the class argument exception is thrown, is not valid. Oh, forgot the word new. There it is. Right? So what am I saying? So any validation that needs to be done, like you do it in Java in your setter method, I can do it here. This is my setter method, okay? So the set is my setter method. So kind of think of the set as the setter method, the get as the getter method. In get, if you wanted to do some kind of formatting to it, code dot, I don't know, what could you do? It's a string. I don't know, maybe just take the first 2 letters of it and add something after it or put a blank. You can do any kind of formatting that you want to do, like you do in Java. So if you want to make your code pretty before you send it or format it, you do it in the getter. If you want to do any kind of validation, you do it in your setter. Same concept. Setters and getters are the same type of methods. But in Java, we call them, we can give them any name, but we usually call them set code, get code. Set takes a parameter, get doesn't take any parameter list. We return and set. Same is the concept here. You can write them like that. There is nothing stopping you. But why not use C# for how it was made, right? Because getters and setters are so common. They said, oh, let's create a property for it. So this method is called a property. It looks like a method, but it's kind of a little different from the method. I mean, it has 2 methods inside it. So this is called, this structure is called a property, right? And in the properties, you can have gets and sets. You can only have gets. You can only have sets, right? So that's a property. Now, another way of writing it. So how would you write its comments? Same way. It's just a method. The property to set and get the value of code. Oh, let's not confuse it with this word value. Let's just say code. To set and get the code. And also notice that I am kind of validating my code, like I'm doing something on it. The code is validated and must be of length 4. Right? So you write your description of this property. Now, let's write, then I have price, and then I have description, yes?
What is value?
It's already defined. Notice how it is in blue. Yeah. So what happens is, okay, let me show you how it works now. Now, okay, what do you do in a constructor usually in any programming language? What do? You take your instance variable on the left-hand side, and you assign it the value of the parameter that comes in. That's what you do, right? Now in C#, this is what you do. There's nothing wrong in this, what I've written. But what is recommended, because I'm going to use the getter method, the setter method, this is how you use the set method. You say code is equal to code. So what is happening? The property called code is being invoked. The set method in there, it is being invoked. And this parameter code is going as value inside it. So value is replaced by this code. So value is a reserved word. You will always say value. But what goes into value is what is on the right-hand side of this assignment statement. So what are you doing? You're calling the set method. You're basically invoking the set method of which property? Of the code property. That's how you call the set method. By default, when you use the property name on the left-hand side of an assignment statement, you're automatically calling the set method. If you use it on the right-hand side, you're calling the get method. If you're assigning something to it, you're calling the set method. If you're using it on the right-hand side, you're calling the get method. That's how you use properties. So that value keyword is replaced by this. That's what happens. Okay, that's how you use a property. So therefore, it didn't need any parameter here. This is the parameter that automatically is passed to it and is passed as value. Okay, now let's write the other. Now that you know what to do, this is what you do for the description. So I will be writing that property in a minute. I haven't yet written it. And I'll be doing the same thing for price. And therefore, we say that the name of the property should be the same as the name of the variable. It will say I haven't put it. That's okay. Don't worry about it. We will. And therefore, I was completing the properties first. But that's how you invoke the set methods. So when the first one, code will be passed to value. In the second one, description will be passed to value. And in the third one, price will be passed to value. Okay, now let's complete those methods. Let's complete those properties. Okay, so where was I? Here. Okay, so let's write our second property. Again, it will be public. Again, I'm just taking it to be public. My getters and setters are public. If you need one to be public, one to be private, then there are different syntaxes.
Will it not auto create the?
It will. If I went and did that on that red squiggly and I said the name description does not exist and show potential fixes, it would have said something like generate read only property, generate this property, and if I said yeah, generate this property, it would create one for me. There it is. Right? It will. But I was just typing it because you're just doing it for the first time. That's why. Right? Similarly for price. Now let's look at what it created for me for a minute. Look at the property it created for me. This property actually is called, it has a name, it is called a self-bodied property. I mean, its body means this. The contents inside it are just get semicolon, set semicolon. Set has been made private. That gives you the option of making a private setter, right? If I don't need it, I say both sets, it's complete in itself. By default, get will have return description, and by default, set will have description is equal to value. So if your getters and setters are just one line of code, what? The line of code is return description, and it is description is equal to value, then you don't have to type it in. You just say get semicolon and set semicolon. By default, get is defined as return description, and set is defined as description is equal to value. Right? These properties are called, if I'm not mistaken, they have a name. Yeah, self-bodied properties. Like their body is complete. You don't have to write it. So you could do it like this. You can, right? So this is a self-bodied property, and there's nothing wrong in it. And why would I type more if I don't have to do anything else in it? Now in code, I had to do some validation, so I typed it in. In here, I don't have to. Like it's just return descriptions, and description is equal to value. So I can write it like this, and these are called self-bodied properties. Right? And the advantage, another advantage of self-bodied properties is the associated instance variable or field description is automatically created. Created means defined. That means you don't even have to do this. You could, but you don't have to. So when you write self-bodied properties in C#, it's doing two jobs. It's giving you getters and setters, and it is creating the instance variable. You don't have to do it. You could, but you don't have to. But you also have to remember that if you're creating self-bodied properties, it does create the associated field is automatically created. I'll call it description. Why is it called description? Because the property is called description. So the instance variable is called description with a small d. But you also have to remember something else in it. If this is what you're using, a self-bodied, then the only way to access that variable, that field description is through the property. I can't use description with a small d anywhere in my code. I cannot. For code, I can. The small c code, I can. I told you I could have done this. There is nothing wrong in doing what I was doing here, though I won't do it, but I could do this. I could say this dot code gets the value of code. I could have done this, which is not correct because there is no validation or nothing. Or I could have taken this code and repeated it there. I could have, but I can't do it with description. I cannot, because description is not defined here. I haven't even defined it. But by virtue of writing a self-bodied property, the description instance variable or the field gets defined. And two, the only way to access that field description is through the property. You can't access it through its name now. So I don't know whether you would like to call it a disadvantage, but it's not. It's just a restriction, right? Yes.
Instead of like writing value there, can you write code.blend is not equal to?
You have to use the word value here. Value is the parameter that is coming to you. So what are you testing? You're saying the parameter that comes to me should be of length 4. It's like something like this. Suppose you had a parameter of type string value coming into. It's something like this. It's like a setter method in which value is coming as a parameter. So what do you check? You check, is the value equal to length is 4? If it is 4, use it. If it is not equal to 4, throw. So it's something like that. But we don't write it. We cannot write it. See, I started having syntax errors. Right? So a property does not have parameters. It doesn't have parameters at all. So this default parameter value is automatically assigned a value, assigned that value that comes from the right hand side. So when I use the code property, that value is replaced by code, this code. Right? When I call the description property, the value is replaced by this variable description. When I call the price property, it is replaced by this variable called price. So you can think of it as the parameter that goes into the set method in a setter method. That's what it is. That's what value is. But you can't call it anything else. You have to call it value. Right? So that's the self-bodied property. Very handy. Small to write. Only get semicolon, set semicolon. If you don't have to do anything, that's the easiest way to write. You even don't have to declare the variable, automatically declares the variable. But you can only use it through this. So now I can't use something like this. If I try to do something like this, which was fine with code, but with description, if I try to do something like this, let me do it so that I get an error. It won't let me use that description variable. I always have to use it through the property. Yeah, even if you leave it. I'm almost positive, but since you asked, let us double check. Because no, then you can. I've never done it because when I use a self-bodied property, I don't bother to do it. But you're right. Like I mean, why would you do it if it is done? But yeah, but I wasn't sure. So then I can, because you've defined it. So it says, oh, it's there. So you could. I mean, nothing stops you. But then if you're going to use a self-bodied property, it's for lazy programmers, but whatever it is, right? But you can do it. So this is allowed. You can still define it and write a self-bodied property. Then it's a normal thing. There's nothing big. What is the big thing? It's a small property. You don't have to write the getter and the setter yourself. But if you don't declare it, then, so you can put a note here for yourself, has a self-bodied property. Therefore, it's not required to be defined here. But good that you asked. I never even thought of it. I never, but now you can't use it. Now you always have to use it through the property. So that's how it works. Okay, that's how it works. I can do it. And it is still giving me an error on price, which means it's the same thing. It will show me the potential fixes. Notice how you can do a read only. You can create a field, of course, which I don't want to do, but I want to create a property. But that doesn't mean that, oh, I always have to do it this way. If you want, nothing stops you from just writing it yourself. I mean, you wouldn't want to, but you don't have to say this dot price here because there is nothing else, right? There is no local variable, right? And nobody says that you have to have a private set method, but if you wanted one, here is your option. You can have a private set method. The getters are never private. Like, I mean, they don't make sense. I mean, why do you write a getter method? So that you want to look at the value of the instance variable. So making it private is useless, but so I don't know whether you can even do it, but you can have private set methods. Nobody can change it from the outside world, but you still write a set method so that your validation is at one place, and then you can call it from the constructor also, or from wherever it is being changed. So private sets are no big deal at all. I'm not sure if private getters are even allowed. Oh, they are allowed. So that's fine. If they are allowed, but they don't make sense. What is a getter? Get a value of an instance variable. So why would you make it private? But if they are allowed, there's nothing wrong in it. Syntactically, there is nothing wrong in it. I thought it's not logical. So why would you even have it? But you can do that. As maybe just inside the class, which some programmers do. They never use the instance variable. They will always use the get method, which is perfectly fine. Sometimes it is an overkill, but that's perfectly fine. Maybe this get method is formatting your string and returning it, price.toString C. Then it's fine. There's nothing wrong in it. I could do that. I could do in this price. I could do, nothing stops me. I can say this is how I want to return it. I just don't want to return the decimal number. I want to format it and return it. And something it doesn't like.
You're supposed to
Converts the numeric value of this to its equivalent string. Exception cannot implicitly convert type string to decimal.
It's expressing.
Oh, no. No, the return type is decimal.
You are returning a string.
Oh, I'm returning a string. Oh, how silly, right? So if I wanted to format it, that's not how I would format it. Oh, so silly. I'm just thinking how we did it in text fields. We used to put them in the text fields. That's why you did a toString. But you can do whatever you want to do with before returning it if you wanted to add 10 to it or whatever, or I don't know. But your return type is decimal here, so you have to keep it a decimal, right? How silly is that? But any type of formatting can be done. If it was a string, I could do whatever I want. Okay, then it comes handy. So you can write a whole property like this. You don't have to use the self-bodied notation, but it's easy. Like, why wouldn't you, right? And the advantage is the instance variable gets created automatically, and I don't have to worry. And the disadvantage is, or not the disadvantage, the restriction is that you have to use it through the property. So here are the getters and setters of code, description, and price. Right? This is how you write getters and setters. And how do you use them? When you use the property name on the left-hand side of an assignment statement, you're calling the set method. When you use it on the right-hand side or in a print, then you're calling the getter. So let's look at a getter method. How to use a getter method. Okay, where am I? Here. So let's write a very simple method that I will be using in my code. I'm going to format my answer and send it back. So I'm writing a method called, which returns a string. So now a normal method, like a normal method in Java. I'm going to call it getDisplay. Please notice names of methods use Pascal naming convention, unlike Java, where they use camel convention. And I'm going to take a string from it and see what I'm going to do in it. Oops. Okay, so what am I going to do? The name suggests get display text. So the name suggests that you're going to display your product, the code, the description, and the price for displaying purposes. That's why it's called get display text. The string separator that's coming as a parameter. So if you want to say code, comma, description, comma, price, then separator will be comma. So you pass what separator you want and you can get it printed. Why am I doing this? I would like to show my products in this list and I want to put them one per line, and in a product I can separate them by commas if I like, by tab character if I like, by pipes, whatever, to make them neat to read. Right? So the get display text is just a simple method that is going to return your code, description, and price and make it a little pretty. And this is what I'm going to do. And see, I'm going to use the get property of the code method. So when I use code, like generally, I'm calling the get method. I could use a small code, CODE, like you could, nothing stops you. Sometimes calling the get method is an overkill. We say it's an overkill. Like there is nothing but return, but I'm just showing you how to do it. And then I'll put the separator, and then I'll put the description, again calling the get method of the description. That's how you call the get method. Right? So when you put it on the left-hand side of an assignment, you're calling the set. When you use it as a variable like this, or put it on the right-hand side of some variable, I'll just show you for the heck of it. So I'm just taking a string variable here, and I'm just saying cc is equal to code. When you use it on the right-hand side, you're basically calling the invoking which method? The get method. Like I call it the get method, but we just say get. Right? So when you use it on the right, you're calling the get. When you use it on the left, you're calling the set. Now, in a return statement, like I didn't have to do this, I can simply do this. And then the price. Right? So it will give code, whatever separator you pass it, the description, whatever the separator, and price. Nothing stops you from using price without the capital P. Then what are you using? You're using the instance variable price. You're not using the get method. And we do this all the time in Java. Right? But some programmers say that when you have a get and a set in a class, use the get and the set. Don't use the instance variable at all. Not inside the class also. The other group says that's an overkill, like it's a private variable. Let me use it inside the class at least. So there are two myths, not myths. There are two groups. One says everywhere in code use getters and setters. Setters I understand. Setters make sense because setters may be doing validation, right? So whenever you need to change the value of an instance variable, always use the set method. I go with it because it makes complete sense to me, because you may be validating, not now, maybe after a month you put some validation. But that code can change. Sets are always created to do validation of data. But in a get, but then people say, why in get couldn't you format it after a month? Like you may change the code. So use it throughout. So nothing stops you from using the instance variable as per se, but both can be done. So you could call it an overkill if you like. So here now I can do what I was doing. Here I can do what I was doing there, right? So you could use price here. I mean, my code sometimes becomes a mess because I try to show you everything, or you could use the small price here. Both will do. I mean, it's just a getter. You're just calling the getter method. So you call the getter method, it returns you the price, you convert it into a string, put a $sign in front of it with 2 places of decimal, and this is what get returns. Just for your information. So please bear with me that I won't write all my comments, but hopefully you know what's going on. So this method returns the product information, right, for displaying purposes. That's why it's called display purposes. Therefore, it's called get display text. And what is the SCP? The separator character or whatever. It's a string, so you could be more than one character between the fields. I'll use it. I'll show you how I use this method. Right? You'll say, oh, I don't need a separator. I always want to put a colon or a semicolon. You could overload this method. Let's overload it. You can overload methods. Nothing stops you. So I don't take a separator, but I always put, I don't know, maybe comma between it, or maybe some tab between it. Just a comma. A tab will be, I mean, anything will do. So that's the tab. That's the tab. And there it is. So this is an overloaded method. I mean, I don't have to say overloaded, but and it's always separated by tab. So it will give code, tab, description, tab, price. So in one line, right? Usually you would like to show your information in one line. Okay, so methods can be overloaded like in any other programming language. I'll give you a break in 2 minutes. I just want to complete one small thing here, just to show you. This method that I've just written here can also be written in another way, and that another way is called self-bodied. Like you had a self-bodied property, this is called a self-bodied method, right? Using lambda operator. I'll tell you what this lambda operator is. Lambda. Have you been introduced to it in Java by Jarrett? Has he talked about the lambda operator? I mean, it came in Java 1.8. So, I mean, it's not necessary that you know about it, but this is how you do it. You can write it like this. In .NET or with the rich. Okay. So you've seen it, right? Okay, so what do? You just write the method name, you put the lambda operator, and then you put your return statement right here. Oh, that's strange. I thought I copied this. Seems like I copied something else. So you're right. Since it only has one single statement inside the body of the method, notice there is only one single statement. I mean, I'll have to comment it out. So you can comment this out if you want, just so that. So I did the same thing. This is now a self-bodied method. Use self-bodied method using the lambda operator. This is called the lambda operator. When your method only has a single statement inside it, then instead of writing the opening bracket, the closing bracket, and so on, and writing the return statement, you can use the lambda operator and write that statement right here. Right? These are called self-bodied methods. I'm almost positive that's what they are called. So you have self-bodied properties and you have self-bodied methods. So that's the lambda operator. Right? It was introduced in Java 1.8 also. So Java also has it. Kind of gives you the functionality, flavor, right? Like when you write functions, you write the function body right there. That's what was introduced. It was a part of making Java a functional language. It's not a function. We know that Java is an object-oriented language, so give it a functional flavor. They added these lambda operators, right? They're called lambda operators. So C# has it, and Java also has it. Okay, it was introduced in Java 1.8. So you could write your method like this also. So you don't have to write opening bracket, closing bracket, the return statement. You're defining the body of the method right there, like after the lambda operator. So that is your product class. So it's not a huge class, but you heard about self-bodied properties, you heard about self-bodied methods, you know about overloaded methods, you already know what constructors are. Instance variables should be private, they're called fields, and instead of writing getters and setters, which you could write normally, we'll stay away from it. Let's do C# in its own right? So we'll use properties in C#. Make sense? Okay, so take a 20-minute break now, and then we'll continue with this. So I'm going to commit these changes. While it doesn't work, right? Is the condition
Sitting
now?
right before the while loop, and then so it's this line.
It hits this line, but yeah, so it's not going inside the while loop, right? That's what it is saying. So basically your result set is empty. Therefore there is no x. Now how come it is empty is let's see, right? So you're saying select all on, I don't know about syntax, okay, but I'm just doing my logic. Select start from inventory user. So now there has to be something in the inventory user. So either your connection was, but there is a try. So if the connection was not made, then it would have made an exception. So the connection makes made.
These are the
And this is in that table called whatever that table was called. What is the name of the table? Are you sure the names are right?
Yeah. No, it's not getting into my wow.
Yeah, because the result set is empty. But why is the victory? Okay, so you get a connection, you do a DB connection. So now this try, where is its catch? So you are catching an SQL exception. So if something happens, it should. So that means the connection was made, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's try to put. Oh, but you already have a system. What happened?
We have not initialized prepared statement in your.
So prepared statements right here.
Oh, but you have to initialize it before you call it.
What do you mean by initialize it?
Like is equal to null or something, and then.
Oh, you mean declare it?
Oh yeah.
It's declared here.
No, yeah, it's right here, it's declared right here, but it's just a local variable. Do you mean it has to be a?
Yeah. It should be
It's still
Yeah, let's try that. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know about syntax, right? Logically, it looks okay to me. And if it was throwing an error, an exception, it would have come here. So nothing is being thrown. And then remove that select all from here
yeah.
and try. I don't know. Like I don't know about syntax.
And you want to select it, right?
just let's
Yeah, select start from table name. So SQL looks okay.
So what is not coming?
C size is 0. There is no result set.
yeah.
Therefore, it doesn't know
So
if
you
I
want
look for
to
something.
I want to put it. I want to populate a my
Result set is null. Result set is
observable
select
list.
all dot execute query. So make, yeah, like looks okay to me. Make a connection.
I will everyone and what is that?
He knows it. Okay, he's. But logically, it looks okay to me.
I know. That's the load.
But something is wrong, right? Your result set is empty. And when can it be empty? Either the connection was not made. That is being made because no catches are being made. Or your select all is wrong. Select start from inventory user.
Can you just bring this? Like,
But it's not even going into the while loop is the biggest problem. I mean, I'm not even looking at that syntax. The result set is empty.
because yesterday night I was getting the same problem.
Oh, you were? Okay. Put your heads together then. Where is the statement?
Statement.
The statement, so where is the statement?
I don't end up using the statement.
Oh, so you don't end up using it. It
Yeah.
would have been this one actually, the select
Yes.
one. Okay.
I just,
So make a DB connection.
So is this in your, so you have called this in your edit? But
Yes.
No, you can't because you're using statement is not equal to not. Okay, so you will have to use your statement because that will come afterwards, but you'll have to
A
use it
large
because
portion
you're
of this was copy and pasted. That's
Yeah.
why it's still but admittedly,
Yeah,
it was
sorry.
copy and
Yes, yes.
pasted. It was copy and pasted from another file that I created.
Yeah, yeah. But that's okay, but I mean, you will have to, that finding
I'll
is
eventually
useless
get
right
rid of
now.
this
Yeah, but
again.
the problem is here.
Yeah.
Why is the result set empty is the biggest problem.
I thought it had something to do, it might have something to do with the fact that there's nothing set here, because I don't have a question mark.
No, no.
Because
Do
it's
we have a
prepared
semicolon?
statement, so it's expecting a question mark.
Yeah, now I don't know. What is the prepared statement? Bring your mouse over the prepared statement and let's see what it expects. Remove that question mark. What does it say? What do I expect? What must be my type?
So maybe this is the load.
So just bring your mouse over the prepared statement. Here in NetView, it should help us. Doesn't it give the syntax of prepared statements?
It's also running on my local machine.
Oh, okay.
No.
Yeah, so now Devang check that whether his statement is select star from whatever is correct. That's
Oh yeah, you haven't used. No, I'm just figuring where I.
but that means you're going to ask the name from the user. It's not
No.
necessary to do a question
So
mark.
where is this?
Your statement was completely right according to me.
Oh right, yeah.
Thinking,
Like that's what I'm saying. I don't know about this syntax. That's my problem.
Okay.
I
Have you,
think it's because
No,
I'm
no, no.
doing a prepared statement.
have you added all this in your table? You have not done that good. See,
Yes, it's okay.
no, it should be. No, it should not be there. It should be here. So what you do is. So it is load users, right? So what you do is you in your while result set and then users dot add users and then user table dot get items add.
But he's showing you the table on wherever he's.
Just get you to hit into the one.
Can you just
Yeah, but
run
it,
the
run it and let me see. His result set is empty. So you are saying that these are not being added to the table? No, this is just getting inside, right? Job, the username and password.
Oh, this is your load. Okay. Oh, that was your load section. That was your load.
See, no, your
This is
syntax was
right.
right.
I know, but it's because I'm doing
Something,
I tried doing the thing. It clearly did not.
yeah. That was fine. I thought that was fine. You didn't have to do that. I mean, your statement was right. But I don't know about is your, like, I don't see anything wrong with that select star from inventory user. But I don't know about the other
Can you?
syntax about it.
So this is your box.
Yes, this is the login. No, this is just the login. The
This is
login,
all.
I have, job has a admin role, so he gets to see the inventory. And when I go to see the who I have as employees,
The content, yeah, because your result set is 0.
it doesn't even hit my while loop.
But you have something in that inventory user table. You do.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's,
Can you not do this? Durable?
I have no idea. Logically, it looks absolutely right?
yeah,
But there has to be something. But it's making a connection because there is no SQL exception being shown. How come the table is empty? How can that be when you receive the table? So there has to be something in your. No, it doesn't matter. No, you're not going inside the while loop at all.
I'm wondering if it's hitting the
you need
assignment
it.
and something
Oh.
might be going on there.
But then you have an exception. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there is one help. Okay, now come back.
Okay, so it is the
It
problem.
is going
It is, it's hitting something.
with this
This
employee, yeah, which is not
we
right.
have.
But if it was a problem, it doesn't it throw an exception or something?
You would think everything is.
Yeah, so something is wrong here. Okay, at
Something's
least
wrong
it's
with
going
here.
there. Okay. So that was a
Something's
good,
wrong
yeah.
with
So now that I don't know.
Observable lists, can you not have multiple objects?
Now we can.
Now I don't know about that. I have no idea about that. You see, because I've never done that, I don't know the nicks and knacks of it. But we know it's going inside the while loop now. At least we know that.
First index is being pulled from, first index is this, strictly from the database. Then the rest of it, the rest is a new store employee with those fields. Wait. Oh, that might be why. Whoops. Just give me a second.
Nacho, you need to talk to me. You need to talk to me. What's going on? Okay, let's talk here because this is on. What's going on? You have to go back home.
That might be a problem.
Yeah.
You don't have the
And when you go back.
So this is your default. You have another.
Oh yeah, I have one for when I have an image. When I have, this is one.
Oh yeah, but you just have to retrieve the password.
I need to make a new one.
No.
I need a third constructor so that way I don't have to grab the password.
And now what? What is the problem?
Yes, but if I want to create a store employee object, I need a constructor. If I'm not, the problem right now is I'm trying to pass in a username, user role, image. No password in there. The problem is that I don't have a constructor that will accept those arguments.
So you're not sure when you will come back.
That's why I need to create another one. Both of them require a password. Whereas I don't need a password.
Okay, so now what you can do is this. Go and see Ross video, your coordinator, right? Because are you taking other subjects also? It's not only my course, you're taking other courses also? And you have a problem with all the courses? Yes. Okay, so go and see Ross video, your coordinator. Tell him that you have some problem and you cannot be
But
done.
when you're
And
assigning
what can
it,
be done is we
you're
take
filling in
your
all those values, aren't you?
completion for you. When you
I
come
know.
back, we give you the test, you do the test and you do. Okay? It's not only with me, this may be with Jared also and other courses. We have many courses. Yes, I have that. Alright, so go and talk to Ross about this. He's your coordinator, right? And tell him that you don't know when you will do that. And then what you will have to do is you will have to fill up a form with each of the teachers for an incompletion. When that is filled, we give you, I think, a semester to complete. Another semester to complete your final. So when you come back, you do your final exam and then you will give your marks.
Next year.
Okay? So go and talk to Ross immediately, exactly. Because it's not only about me, it's all your teachers. What other courses do you take? What other courses do you take? Which ones? All computers or communication also? Gen Ed is communications? Any Gen Ed course? No Gen Ed? No communication? All computers to talk to Ross. Let Ross understand what's going on, right? And then he will tell each one of us and we can fill a incomplete form with you. So your semester is not complete, but it will be when you come back. You will come back, right? Yeah. Okay, so when you come back, you can come and give your final exam for every course or whatever the teacher decides.
You can cast it as file.
So I'll say, okay, Yachu, when you come back, you can take the exam. Okay? So every teacher has to know beforehand. You have to fill a form this week because this is the last week before the holidays. Right? So go to Ross immediately, talk to him, and say what you want to do, and then fill an incomplete form with each one of us. And then you tell us when you will be back and what do you want to do. And then we'll say, okay, Yachu will complete his semester by January 10th. So we'll put a date. You know what I mean? So you have to do it weekly, this week itself. And you have to fill up a form with us, all of us. Email him and ask. Okay, email him and say that I need to see you at Jenny. If Ross is not available, go to the associate dean. Associate dean's name is Tim. I'll send you his email. You know Tim? He sits in D137 or something. 37.
Let's talk about the Ross has first.
Okay, so send an urgent email to Ross. Say you want to talk to him about something very urgent regarding your travel plans for and then go to him and talk to him and then get this settled. Okay, so you can fill up an incomplete form and then you can come back and then complete your forms. Okay? Okay, make sense?
Yes.
But there are only 3 days left, so get it done before you leave for. So when are you leaving? Are you leaving tomorrow? No.
No, I read for my visa. If I can go tomorrow, the next thing happens.
Okay.
Yes.
I was thinking it sounded like basically identical.
See, the problem is that it doesn't get added to this. Actually, I don't need to. Because I know that's this one. Username, password. These are all.
Oh, there's a prep.
Can you just tell me what you are?
The view? The view is just pulling. So this view is, I have the employee ID given to me by the database. And the employee name is from the object store employee. So I'm trying to get this.
Oh, I did. That really makes sense.
Store employee is main. Employee. Don't think I used that. No, I didn't use it. So I only have the one employee. I don't have a part-time or whatever. I didn't use inheritance. The only one I had is store manager, but that's irrelevant. Store employee. Store manager doesn't have any database limitation.
This is all the validation.
This is all validation for the store employee. It's employee information.
So what is very
For an insert, that is that's for publishing a new employee. Yes. This gets called by
you are going to edit this.
not yet.
So in your view, where you want to go, you want
That I'm going to edit. What's not working is just populating this table. It's the only thing that's not working. Because it's trying to create a new store employee, but it's not
So
doing
what I
it.
have done is I have so this all integrated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is list. So this is the same way if you want to.
I've done it differently. I've done a bunch of other.
So if you just want to get in that. So,
Okay, guys, let's write the next class now. Right, are we okay? I think we went on at 3:20, okay? So now I'm going to show you another way of validating data. You've been validating data since week 3 now, because garbage in, garbage out. Till we validate our input, our output is always garbage. So some of you use the try parse method. Some of you use try catch blocks like I do. Today what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all my validation in a class. And the advantage is it's all inside a class. That means I can import the class wherever I need those validation methods. So what kind of validation do you need in a new product? Think about it. The code should be provided, cannot be empty, right? The description should be provided, cannot be empty. Price, of course, should be provided and must be a decimal number and must be positive, should be greater than 0. Okay, so these are the validations I need for my input. So now if I was like, I could just do it in my form like I've been doing it till date. That's what you do in the form. You read the value, you validate it, and then do it. I can do it there, but now the aim is, since you're learning classes, right, why not write a class that validates my data and then use that methods of that class whenever I want to validate it. The advantage, all the validation methods can go inside a class. All the other classes can use the different validations. So suppose this class also needs to validate price. There was another form that was also doing something with the price, needed to validate it. This form needs to validate a field called code. Maybe another form needs to validate a field called something else, but it needs to validate it that it's not empty and so on. So now all validation, what I'll do is I'll put it inside a class. All the methods that are validating empty fields or decimal fields or integer fields or within range, everything will go into a class. And wherever I need to use it, I'll just call those methods. Definitely a better approach, instead of writing try catch in every form that I need to work with. Okay, so what I'm going to create now is I'm going to create a validator class. A class, you could not name it anything. I'm going to call it validator because its job is to validate my values throughout my project. Now in here, I only have a form that needs it, but anyway, right? I will again make it public. Oh, now you have a few options with validation classes, but we'll talk about them as I go on. It can be a static class also, but we'll talk about it. So the first thing which C# misses, it assumes that it's not a public class, but a private class. I'll make it public. Okay. Now I'm going to write some validator methods inside it. And I'll make it a static class. I'll make all its methods static because when do you use static methods? When you want to call the method with the class name, it has nothing to do with an object. It could be validating any object. I could be validating an empty field from anywhere. I could be validating a field to be decimal from anywhere. So I'll make all these methods static, and then I'll call it with the class name. And in C#, you have the option that you can also make your class static if you want. Java also has it, but I mean, we've never done, but it's not so common. We've seen static methods, we've seen static variables, but static classes are also available. Okay, not available, I mean doable. Okay, now let's put some methods inside it. So I'm going to write a few methods. I'm not going to do everything, but a hint is that if I'm doing decimal validation, you should know how to do integer validation. You know what I mean? So that kind of stuff. Okay, so let's try to do something. I'm going to write a public method, of course, not a private one. I'm going to make this a static method so that I can use it with the class name. It's going to return a Boolean value, and let's call it is present. Is present means the field will not be empty. I'm going to pass a text field to it. And it can be any text field from any of the forms, doesn't matter, right? And this text field, you can call it whatever you like. Sorry, not text field. What is it called? Text box, right? I think it's called text box, right? And you can call it whatever you like. I'll just call it text box to make my life easy. And there definitely, since this is Not available, you will have to using system.forms. So this text box is just the normal text box that you use in a form. So what is this method going to do? Look at its parameters. It says I'm called is present. Again, Pascal naming conventions for methods. Okay, like a class. I'm expecting you to pass me a text box. I'll check if it is empty or not. So now look at this method. It becomes a generic method which you can call from any of the forms. You don't have to write an independent if in all your forms. You do the checking here. You just call this method. Okay. So what am I going to do? It's going to check if the field is empty or not. And if it is not empty, it will return a true, else it will return a false. Okay. So let's do. Now a few things that I want to show you will come handy when you create your message boxes. I'm going to take, I don't know what I called it. I really don't care, but I'm trying to keep it the same with the other class. So I got their printout also today. So I'm going to create a private static variable. Now, why am I creating everything static? Because static methods can call static methods, and static methods can only use static variables. Therefore, everything is static. Okay. Okay. I'm going to create a static variable and I'm going to call it title. Okay. And I'm going to write a property for it. A public property for it. Public, it's a string. String is missing. That's why it's giving me an error. The property is called title and only has a get and a set. So a few things missing. And of course, if things are missing, you will get syntax errors. That's what was missing. Private. Okay. So wrong place. That's its property. Oh, what the God knows from where it came. Okay. So that was the get. And that was the set. That's what I was trying to do. Write a self-bodied property. Anything else? No. Am I okay? What isn't it like? Oh, I'm saying it and not doing it. There it is. Since it is a static variable that it is writing the setter and the getter for, it has to be a static method. Control KD is how I've learned it. Craft dinner. Anyway, there it is. Right. So I've just created a property called title with a capital T and has an associated. You don't have to have this. Remember, you can just do this. It has an associated field called title. So you may not even declare it. Can remove this definition. Since have has a self-bodied property. I'll show you how I use it very smartly in my message box. Just to give you an idea how versatile it is. Okay. Okay, what it is going to do is it is going to check if that, so you can take your own title and set it to whatever you like. I'm just for the heck of it. You can do it right here also. Nothing stops you. You can do it right here also. You can give it an initial value. There are many ways of doing it. You can do it right here also. You can initialize. I told you in C#, in Java, we never do it. Like we never initialize variables there, but you can if you like. If you want to give it a different value every time, give it inside the method. So maybe in this one, you want to call it entry error. In another one, you want to call it something else. Then you can do it right here. So I'm calling the set method of the title property and assigning a value entry error to the variable title. That's what it is doing. Okay. Now, I will kind of take the previous title, whatever. So getting it, and I'm going to add something called, I'll show you something. It's very interesting. Something I must, like, I didn't tell you till now because we don't want to tell you everything right in class 1. I'm going to show you something, okay? Just putting it at the end to make it neater. Okay, what have I done? I have assigned title entry error, just a name. Again, as I said, I put it inside the method so that you can give it different names. Then I have concatenated it with something called text box tag. Now this text box is this text box coming into my parameter. It's a parameter. Now what is this tag property? We've never even worked with it. We've worked with many text box properties. Let's go back to that design for a minute, to your product new form. This is your, so when you pass on this field as the one to be checked, is it present or empty? There is a property called tag here. For every text box, there is a property. And if I write code here, just for the heck of it, what will happen is in this validator, what will it become? Code entry error. right? So now I can use this code entry error, description entry error, and I can put it in the title bar. So now I don't have to create different titles or different message boxes. I pass on a tag. I use that tag. I'll put a blank here and it will say code entry error if I'm passing the code field. It will say description entry error if I'm passing the description because of the tag property. It will say price. You could say anything. You could say Anju entry error. You know what I mean? But I'm giving them names which make sense. Code entry error, description entry error, and price. Not in text. Thank you. Perfect. Did I make that mistake before also? Yes, I did. It's in the tag property, not in the text property. Thank you. In the tag property. Right? So I have set the tag property of my text boxes now. And what I can do now is I can use them here. And now it will become, if this method is called with the code text box, it will become code entry error. If it is called with the description text box, it is called description entry error. And now it's neat. I can put it in my message box title and I'll have a proper title every time. Right? Neat. It's so cute. I mean, so easy to do it. Okay, now what? I was just preparing my message boxes. Okay, now what? Now your normal if statement. How do you check if a field is empty or not? You take that text box, right? And you check whether its text is not empty or string empty, whatever you want to do. So what am I doing? Okay, I'm checking if it is empty. So if it is empty, I'm just going to do a message box.show that I do every time. I'll say message box.show. And notice something else also that can be done very smartly. I can take the text box.tag. And this all happens because I've put in the right value. And I'll say plus cannot be blank. So it will say code cannot be blank, description cannot be blank, price cannot be blank. Yes.
So now in your catch block, you don't have to.
I'll call this method and it will do the job. Yep. Validator dot is present method. I'll call it with the code text field. I'll call it with the description text field. I'll call it with the price text field. Neat, right? Yes. Oh, because if it has a name, remember we separate words by blank. So I'm putting a blank, otherwise it will come together. I'm putting this blank so the message looks neat. Okay. Like if you want to say today is Tuesday, don't you say today blank is blank Tuesday? So that's the blank I put for that. And similarly, I put this blank here so that if I say code, then it will say blank entry error, right? Yes.
Why you created that title?
You don't have to, but it looks nice in my title bar. If I say code, and all your messages box should always have good titles. I'll use this here. I'll show you. Let me use it. Give me a minute. Okay, cannot be left. Is it?
Like on the top, use the title.
I've called the field title. Is that what you're asking? Why have I called it title? It's just a variable. You could have called it anything. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. Where am I going to use it? I can say, if you don't want to say is cannot be left blank with price, it kind of looks odd. You can say is a required field. That's a common message. Okay. Okay. Where am I going to use it is your question. Right here. Use the get method of the title right here in my message box title. So now it will say on the title of my message box. I've always said your message boxes must have proper messages, proper titles, proper icons, everything proper. So if this method is called with the code, what will my title say? Code entry error. If it is called with description, it will say description entry error. So now I'm telling you which field is causing the problem. Plus, I'm also saying is a required field. I'm giving you a message, right? You can kind of complete it yourself. You can write whatever you like as long as it is correct. Cannot be left blank. Here, like. It's just a message, grammatically correct message, right? Now with the icons, use whatever you like. Usually I go with message box dot OK button, and we go with message box dot error. And I always say bring the focus back to your field, right? Now I know what that field is. There. See, so now instead of saying what isn't it like, oh, Boolean. Okay, so if there was an error, I'll return a false. And if everything went okay, I'll return a true. So if something went wrong, I'll return a false. If everything is okay, I'll return a true. So if your text box is empty, this is what gets returned. Right? You could do the opposite. You could say I'll return true if something is wrong, but usually false means something went wrong. And it will return a true if everything went okay. So now I'll call it with the code text box, I'll call it with the description text box, I'll call it with the price text box. One method in the validator class that can be called from all three fields. From one form, you could use the same method from another form, the third form, the fourth form. If you have 10 forms, you can call it from anywhere. You don't have to write an if statement everywhere now in your code. So that's the use of the validator class. Let's add more. What else have you learned to validate? You've learned to validate if a number is a decimal, is an integer, and so on. So let's write one for that also. So let's write another method. I'm short of time, so I'm not writing my comments. That doesn't mean you don't know how to write comments. Again, I'll pass a text box to it. Call it text box. So now this method checks whether the input that you are sending it is a decimal number. Okay, so is it a decimal number? Now, you just have to be careful that you should be calling is present first before you call is decimal, because otherwise I'll have to repeat it in everything. So I'll say if it is present and it is decimal and it is within range, it's okay. You know, so the sequence in which you call your methods is important when you call it them. So here, otherwise in each method, I'll have to do all checks. Before is decimal, I'll have to check, are you present? Then only can I say is decimal. So every method is doing a job. You have to call it correctly. So if I wanted to check price is correct, I'll say if price is present and is a decimal and is within range, then it's fine. Otherwise, of course, error messages will come up. Okay. Yes. Do you have a question? No. Okay, good. So let's write the is decimal now. What do you do in is decimal? Parse it. Right. So I'll use a parse again. So now if I wanted, I could have given something, another title here. Instead of saying entry error, I could have said something like non-numeric error. You know what I mean? Now the title could have been non-numeric error. So then if I pass price to it, it will say price non-numeric error. If I'm passing quantity to it, it will say quantity non-numeric error. You know what I mean now? Now I can bring my own titles if I want. So instead of entry error, I can say something like non-numeric error. Now non-numeric, but if is a decimal. If a field is integer, yeah, it depends. Like I'm just kind of writing my own. Now, if you wanted you always wanted to call it an entry error, then there was no sense putting it in each method. You could have just initialized it here. Okay, so I'm saying non-numeric error. I'm initializing it to non-numeric error. And then now, again, the title depends on you. I'm just making it up. Okay, what do you have to do? What do you have to do? Actually, this could have gone inside it. That's okay. No big deal. Okay. How do you check if a number is decimal or not number? Parse it. Okay. So what do I do? If. Right. So now I'm writing my if here. So now I could write a try catch block like I do in my till now, but I'm going to use try parse today because I haven't done it with you at all. So try to parse the input that is coming to you. Try to parse that the input that is coming to you. Try to parse it. Okay. And keep in mind, try parse needs another variable. Let me call it number. If everything goes well, number will also will give you the output value. If not, then number will be 0. So I need a local variable here. So I'm going to create a local variable number and give it a value of 0. Because it's local, no value is assigned to it. You don't even have to assign a value. If there is an out in front of it, it means that number is a reference parameter. It's being passed by reference. Nothing may come into it, but something will go out. So I don't have to initialize it to 0 and it will work. Okay, so let's try to parse it. What am I missing? Bracket. Okay, so I'm saying, oh, I'm trying to parse it. And if I'm able to parse it, I'm good. If I'm not able to parse it, then something went wrong. Okay. So instead of, so if I'm able to parse it, I'm good. That means it is a decimal number that you've given me. But if I'm unable to parse it, what will I do? I don't have to put an else because return says go back. I'm going to create a message box like I did before. Use the show method. And now the message. What was the name of your field? The new value of title. Again, I'll use the tag property. It comes very handy. So the name of the field will come in the tag. And I'll concatenate it with my title that I already have. And I'm just showing you a different title. Nobody says you have to give it a different title. What doesn't it like? Oh, T is capital. Oh God. Okay, there it is, right? And then complete it. What do you want to say? This is a non-numeric error. Okay. So take your text box dot tag. So that's the name of the field. Like I'll usually keep it the name of the field. And I'll say must be a decimal value. Good enough message. I'm saying that field must be a decimal value. So I'm telling the user that it has to be a decimal value. I'll again use my title. So if it is in price, it will say price non-numeric error. Oh, again, we'll put a blank here so that we have a blank before the title. Okay. And again, I kept this price description and code in capital. So it's a proper sentence. And then again, the normal message box dot. There. And again, I know the field. So I'll do a select all of my text box. See how neat it is. One single method will take care of everything from wherever. I don't need an else here because there is a return and return of false. Job done. So this small method is now going to check if it, so if there is a is decimal and if you wanted to check is integer, just add another method to your validator class is integer. I don't need is integer, but if it was an integer, what would you be doing? You would be parsing integer.tryparse. Also keep in mind, this will also work for out of bounds also, but I'll write my own methods for out of bounds. Yes.
So this method will return false.
If something is wrong.
Yeah, but also if something is missing, right? If you don't have a value, it's an empty string. Empty
string will return this message. Yeah. So I'll call this method is present. If is present is okay and it is a decimal, then everything, then I'll do whatever math I have to do.
Would that be wrong for us to call the is present method inside of the is decimal?
No, nothing. No, you could.
So
but
we don't have to call it
separately. That's what I was mentioning. I said you could write the call the is present from here and only call this. But what I am trying to do is write independent methods so that if one wants to do only is present, it is available. Another field wants to do is present and is decimal, then that's available. So I'm not mixing them. I'm writing them independently. You as a programmer have to keep in mind which method to call in which sequence also. So is present, is decimal, and whatever. So I'm not mixing them because not every field may want to do is present and is decimal. Some field may only want to do is decimal. Yeah, but is decimal will always require is present. Yeah. It will always require. But again, my aim is every method does a job. That's what object-oriented programming says. Each method does a job. So my each method is doing a job. Is decimal is only checking if it is a decimal. So it's not doing two jobs of checking it is blank and decimal, and they're independent. So it's up to the programmer to use whatever in whatever sequence. So if you wanted an is integer, you will add another method is integer. And all you have to do, it will not be very different. All that will be different is that this should be an integer.parse. See, it's so neat. Now let's write another one. I need another one. That another one I'm going to write again. It's a public static bool method, and I'll say in range or something, is within range. So now your price must be greater than or equal to 0 and less than, I don't know, maybe $500, maybe $1,000, maybe the maximum value of decimal, which is too much. A product is never of that price. Remember, the maximum decimal value is such a big number. But like, it depends on whatever you want to. So you're checking is within range. What are you checking is within range? You're checking the text box that you're sending me is it within range? And your range, for me at least, the lower range is also a decimal and the maximum range is also a decimal. Now, if I was checking integers, then I would have integer minimum and integer maximum. So now what does this method do? This method checks that your field is within range and you define your range. 0 to 40, 0 to 100, minus 10 to plus 10, minus minimum value to minus maximum value. Again, it's a flexible method. It can work for anything you want. Any range checking can be done with this method. Now, if it was an integer that I was checking, then of course this would be a minimum integer and this would be also an integer, right? So now let's write this method. Again, you can take your title of whatever you like. And what would you like to call it? Instead of saying non-numeric error, you would say out of range error. So your titles can reflect what is going wrong. Okay, so you can say out of range error. And now let's take a decimal value. Just for the heck of it, I've already shown you the try parse. Instead of try parse, you can also do the, I don't need to do try parse because again, I have to remember I'll be calling is present first, then I'll be calling is decimal, and then I will be calling is range. So the sequence in which you call your methods is important. Independently, they're assuming you're doing the right job. But of course, you could have made them completely self-independent. So the decimal checks it is present before it checks it is decimal. Within range checks it is present and is decimal before it checks it is within range. So you could be calling those two methods from here. I'm just writing them single and then I'll call them correctly. Yes, Devang?
Say for example, like we have two forms and
Yes.
both other like both are different forms. So
Exactly.
we need different validations, right? So is it necessary to call all the methods in our validator class to be in sequence of both the forms?
Yes. If in the first form you're checking if a field is present and it is an integer and it lies between 10 and 20, then you'll have to call it is my field. You'll have to call it is present, is an integer, is within range.
Okay, so it will be called in the
Right sequence.
right sequence, but it doesn't.
Oh, here it doesn't matter how you write them. No. Doesn't matter at all.
So the validator class is just like
A collection of methods. It's just a collection of methods. How you call them in what sequence will depend upon your form requirements. But here it's just a class. What is a class? Capsule. Remember, you can shake it. It still remains inside it. Encapsulation. So how you put your methods there is not important at all. Like in Matthews was saying, can I call before even I do this, can I call the is present method inside is decimal? Yes, you can. That way, from your code, you only call is decimal and it will do both jobs. Check it is present and check it is decimal. But I am only writing them independent. But of course, whatever, like if you have something else, you can do it, right? So here, how you write them doesn't matter. How you call them matters, okay? So I'm assuming that your calling is within range after you have satisfied yourself that the field is available and it is a decimal value. Now you're checking that it is, what is it? So what did I do? I use the convert method. That also throws an exception. It does. The convert method, the two decimal method in the convert does throw exception, but I'm assuming I've already caught, I'm only at this stage after I've checked that they exist. So I can say convert to decimal and take your text box, take its text property and convert it. Right? And convert it. You've converted it. Now, if this number that you have converted is greater than or equal to minimum and this number is less than equal to the maximum, that means your number is within the range. Right? So what do you return? True. Job done. Else, what do you want to do? Again, throw a message. So you know what I'll do is I'll kind of pick it up from here. And else is not important. It's not wrong, but it is not required because when you say return true, you're going back. So you don't have to write the word else here. If it doesn't go back, it does this anyway. Okay. So what would you like to, instead of saying must be a decimal value, greater than equal to will show the min value. Okay. So I'll close it here. I'll say min. So I'll kind of go to the next line so that you can see it, but I'm giving a message. This price must be a decimal value greater than or equal to min and less than equal to max. So that will be my message. Nice and pretty, right? So it should be greater than or equal to the min value, and it should be less than or equal to the max value. So the error message comes on the screen. I'll show you how it works. It's not a big deal. So price must be a decimal value greater than or equal to, says I'm saying price is between $0 and $500. Greater than or equal to 0, or you can remove this. You can say it should be greater than 0. You can remove this. Price should be greater than 0. Instead of equal, it should be greater than 0. Prices are not 0. So it depends what you're trying to do. Are you checking between 0 and something, or are you saying greater than 0 and less than? Whatever you're doing. Must be a decimal value greater than or equal to minimum. So if you say, how can price be 0? Here, remove it. What's the big deal? And less than or equal to max. And then let's see, where am I going wrong? So this came here, and this has to be removed. There it is. And there it is. There it is. So what will be the message? Price must be a decimal value greater than or equal to whatever you pass here. So suppose I say $0. Greater than or equal to 0, or greater than 0 and less than or equal to $500. Whatever I pass. It will just print it out, right? And I'm not putting dollars or anything because I don't know, maybe it's not price, maybe it's marks of my students. You know what I mean? So I don't want to put any dollar sign. And a select all and a focus. So now if you wanted a is within range for integer, this would be an integer, this would be an integer. If you wanted to check if something is a integer, this would be, you would be checking integer.try. So I've only written 3 methods because I need them. Your job in the exam will be to add more methods to the validator. Maybe you're validating an integer. Maybe you're validating marks of a student must lie between 0 to 50. You know what I mean? So you'll just add 2 more methods, very similar to this, and your job will be done. So the validator can have as many methods. I will stop here because I don't need any as far as I know. But whatever. And again, nobody tells you you have to use error. Maybe you want to do exclamation, whatever. It depends on, exactly depends on you. Okay. So you can change all this to whatever you like. So you're saying, oh, how can you give a value that is outside range or whatever? So use, if it is an error, use an error. If it is an information, use an information. If it is something else, use a something else. So instead of exclamation, you could have used information also. So use the right icon. There it is. My validator class is ready. So a class whose all methods are static, you have the option of making that class static in C#, also in Java. And what are static methods? Methods that belong to the class. Okay. Now my 2 classes are ready. Now the aim is, let's write this one first because we are going to use it here. Okay. Now my aim is when the user gives a code, when the user gives a description, and when the user gives a price, all 3 things are given. The price is a decimal between, say, I don't know, 0 and $500 or 550 cents or whatever, then I'm ready to save. So when the user presses the save button, what should happen? The data must be validated, and if it is okay, it must be saved. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, so let's double click on the save. Oh, there is an extra one here. Let's remove this. I must have done it. When you go back to your product, new product, I'll get an error. Let's go to that error, and then, oops. No, sorry, back. Remove this. There was just an extra label click. Some of you just give me so many extra clicks that I don't want to give you any extra clicks here. Okay, so what do you want to do in save? Now, how do you use your validator? Help me. How do I use your validator class? I'm going to say if. Notice the sequence in which I'll call it. If my validator, where are you? There you are. Dot. Right? Now, which text box do I need to pass? Right? Is present, but is present method. What do I want to pass to the is present method? That code text box. So it should be called something like text code. There it is. If code is present and validator dot, who is present? My description is present, and so look at my sequence. My sequence is important. So and why am I checking it in this sequence? Because I have code, description, price. So it looks neat that I check them in that order. So that if something is missing, the message comes first. Then if description is missing, that's the second message. If price is missing, that is the third message. And validator dot is present. What is my third field? Something price. And now what should be my next check? Okay, so the three fields are not blank. And now what must be my next check? If my price is a decimal. Perfect. What should I pass? The price text box, right? And what else check remains? Let's do is within range. Who is within range? My price is within range. Now, what would you like your prices to be? I can give a 0 because prices cannot be negative. See, it's now checking. I don't even have to check if it is greater than 0. So it's kind of becoming more compact. Okay. So you can say 0 here, or you can say, you'll say, oh, the minimum price is $10. You can put 10 here. You can say the minimum price is $30. You can put 30 here. If you were doing a range from -10 to 10, it was a temperature thing. I could say -10 and 10. So minimum and maximum can be any values now. Okay, so 0 is my minimum value. If you wanted to pass, oh, my product can be, this can be its maximum value, which is not true, but you could if you wanted. Nothing stops you. So when I tell you to say, oh, there is no overflow error, what should be your range? Minus minimum value to maximum value. You can use the same method now. Though it will also be thrown from here, it is also thrown if you're, remember, is decimal will also throw an exception if it is outside your range also. Parse also throws an error if you're outside your range. But I mean, it depends on you. That one I just wrote for is decimal. This one I'm checking if it is in this particular. So now it's up to you. So you're saying my minimum price is 0. That means my price should be greater than 0. I wouldn't use decimal dot max value here. A product's price cannot be that much ever. But use $100 or $500 or $1,000, whatever you want. So now it will check. See, now this sequence is important. Is text code present? Yes. If not, it will stop right here. It won't even go to the AND. Remember how AND works? It says my first condition is false. I'll stop. You'll get one message on the screen. That's what I want. One message at a time with the field that is giving it, with the proper message, with the focus, with the select all. Everything has been done. So if this is present, then it will go to this one. If this is present, it will go to this one. If this is present, it will check if it is a decimal. If that is it, it will check that it is this, and let's close our if here. If everything is okay, then what do I want to do? Then I want to save my record to my file, add it to my list also. So there are a few things to be done. So if everything is okay, then I want to do this. I want to create a new product object. I want to create a new product object. I have three things, right? I'll create a new product object, call the new product, pass the three values to it, text code in that sequence, text description, text price. And remember, this is a string value, so I'll have to convert it to decimal. I've already checked that it is a valid decimal and it is within range. Remember, the constructor required 3 parameters from you. I've passed it the 3 parameters, and I've forgotten to put the text property in both of them. So that's the first string, that's the second string, and it doesn't like what? 2 decimal. The method is called 2 decimal. If everything is okay, I create a product and I put it in that list. I want to show it in the list every time. Or we'll do that saving at one go at the end. You can do it wherever. So I'm saying, okay, I've created it and I'll close this form. So this is what save does. Save takes the 3 values, validates them, and creates a product. Right? That's what it does. It creates a product. Now I have to return this product. I can't put it as a local variable. I'll have to create a global variable. Create a global variable or a class variable called product. And then create it here. Don't declare it here. If it's local, how will I pass it back? And I close the form. So the product has been created. I'm going to write a private method here. A public method here. And I'll call it, it returns a product. I'll show you in a minute how I'm going to use it. And I'll say get new product. and return the product that you created. You'll say, why didn't you just let's save, pass it back? Same thing. Get methods just return products. Save is just kind of saving it. And then you have the cancel button. Remember you had the cancel button. So go back to your form and double click on cancel button. What do you want to do in cancel? Basically nothing, just close the form. So here is an example where you're just closing the form. So if you say cancel, form is closed. If you click on save, everything is validated. And if everything is validated, it creates a product. You could have just said return product right from here. I just wrote a different method. It's not necessary at all. You could have just created the product and returned it. Right? So this is your new form that is created. Now, how do I call it from here is the biggest thing. So when the user clicks on add product, what happens? That form is shown and that product is retrieved. Right? So when the user clicks on the add product, what happens? Let's see what happens in add product. Hopefully, as long as I can keep the names the same, I'm okay. Okay, so add product. Okay, so create a new form object. What was it called? Form, there it is. Just call it whatever you like, really doesn't matter. New product form. We want to show that form, keep in mind, okay? And then once you create that form, show it on the screen. So show dialog. Right? This is what add should do. It should create the new form. It should show it on the screen. It should get that product from the user. So now call that get new product method. I'll have to make it static. I'll make it static. It was called get something. There it is. Get new product. Right? So, and if it is not equal to null, that means you got something back, the user hadn't done a cancel, then you have to do something. So this is what add should do. Add should create an instance of that form, show the dialog box, user inputs it, gets the product back, right? We just wrote it. Remember, we wrote it here. There it is. Except that it should be a static method and it's not complaining, which is very strange. Oh, this is a form. Oh God, I keep forgetting that I'm now mixing the two. That's okay. Don't worry. Where would we? Where would we? Where would we? There it is. There. And if it is not equal to null, we have to do something. Let's see what we have to do. What should you now do? So you got a form, you showed the form, the user, everything was validated, the user pressed the save button. When the save button was pressed, something will come back. If that something is not equal to null, that means you have something now. You have a product. Add it to your list and put it back in the file also. So we are going to now need a list. So let's now do the use what we need. Okay, the global variables we'll need. We'll require a list here. This list, why? This list, okay? I want to populate this list. Okay, so I'll require a list variable and each element of the list is a product element. You know that list can contain only integers, list can contain decimals, but list can also contain objects. So I have a list of products. I'll call it whatever. I'll call it products and we'll start with the null one. Now, what should happen when this form comes up? You tell me, what should happen when this form comes up? This list must be populated with all the data in your file. Right? You say, where does this file is from? Where is the file coming? I'll show you from where the file is coming. Give me 1 minute, right? This I've already given the code to you. So your file is coming. You can save your file wherever you want. You can save it in a particular directory if you want. I have chosen to save my file in my current project. You'll say, what is this path? The double dot slash the double dot. It says, wherever I am, go to my parent directory and then to its parent directory and then create, and then the file is called products.txt. Let me explain what this current directory is, all this. So do you remember last time I told you where is your executable file? Your executable file sits here in the debug folder. When I say go to the parent, where does it go? Bin. When I say go to the parent of bin, where does it go? Product maintenance. So you come to the main folder and your file will be saved in the main folder. If you want to put it right in the debug folder, which is another place where you could put it, then you don't need this at all. So last week I showed you a file dialog box and you chose where you wanted to save the file. Here I'm just assuming that you will save the file in the same folder. If you want to save it in the debug, you don't need this at all because products.txt by default will go in your debug folder. This is where your program is running from. Your exe file resides in your debug folder. That is where it resides. So I'm giving a path. And this class has two methods, very simple, easy methods without try catches, unfortunately, because of time limitation. I didn't put it, but I will. It's no big deal. The get products is doing what? It takes your file, opens it, reads from it, one line at a time, and puts it into your product lists. And notice what it is doing. Please pay attention to how it is reading from the file. This is very important, something you will need in your exam too. So the file is opened here. This is not new to you. We learned how to open files last week also. This file is being opened in open or create mode. So if the file exists, it will be opened to read. If the file does not exist, it will be created. So when you run your program for the first time and there is no file, that's perfectly fine. An empty file, nothing in the list, right? That's what open or create does. Okay, now what do? You read one record at a time from your file. One record at a time. You should exactly know how that record has been saved. And I will save it as code, pipeline, description, pipeline, price. That's how I'll store it. You will have to decide how you store it. So when I store it, notice how I store it. In one line goes the code. In the same line, I put a pipe character. You could have put a comma here. Nothing stops you. You could have put a colon here. You could have put a tab here, whatever you like. But you have to exactly know what are the contents of my file. So when I save it code followed by a pipe character, followed by description, followed by the pipe character, and then followed by price. And right line will take you to the new line. So the contents of my file are like this. Suppose my code is 1, 2, 3, 4. The code of my product. The description is laptop. And the price is $700 and 90 cents. That's my first record. That's how I will save it, right? What will be my second record? Maybe the code is, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've said they will be exactly of size 4. If you try to give something else, it won't work. I say mouse. I said the price is $50.50. That's how my records will be saved. You'll say, how did you decide that? You can decide whatever you like. I decided to save it like this. You could have saved code, description, price, one in each line. But I think saving it together kind of gives a picture that there's one product I'm talking about. You could have put a comma, you could have put a colon, you could have put a tab. But I decided to save it this way. So if I decide to save it this way, I am reading it this way. I'm reading the whole read line, and there is a split method now. Split is a method of the string class. You are splitting this row into on the pipeline. So what will happen is 1, 2, 3, 4 will go into column 0. The description laptop will go into columns 1, and the 740.99 will go into columns 2. You'll say, what is this column? This is just an array of strings. It's a text file. You read, it's a text file. Each record has 3 parts to it, and there I split it on the dash on the pipe character. The first one becomes the code. The second one becomes the description. The third one I know is the price, and I add this product to a list, and then this list I'll give it to whoever calls me, and that's how I'll populate the list. So this class has already been provided to you to make it kind of neat and clean in the sense that, oh, where are your try catches? We just see, does it need a try catch? This is a class directory. That's the exist method, doesn't throw an exception. Create directory, oh, throws quite a bit of exceptions. So if it was kind of very easy to put it in a try catch, easy way, put this in try, put everything in try, and put, where do you want to end your catch? Try here. Let's put it in. So everything in try. Just a little careful. So if I'm doing something, I'll close my try here, right? I'll put a catch here. And just so that I can try to catch all kind of exceptions. I'm just writing one for now. We talked about all these exceptions last week, so I don't want to waste my not waste my time. I mean, I don't want to put in time. And this I'll put it in finally. So I've written a try catch finally block now. And where should this return products go? If everything goes well, right? If everything goes well. So if everything goes well. Okay, so now look at it. I just put it in a try catch. It was not a big deal at all. I don't know why was I being lazy when I did it. Okay, so you're saying, now this is just to show you the directory, if it exists or not, if you were using the dir or whatever. I create a stream reader. If something, any error that will occur will go to, so I've just put one catch. You could have as many catches. I'll take this list products and just put it globally. There. Okay, so a list is created. This is just to show you how you check for directories. A text in file is created for reading. While there is data in the file, you pick up one line at a time, split it on the pipe character. When you split it on the pipe character, by default, an array of size 3 will be created. Why? Because you have 3 of them, right? The first one is the code, the second, the description, the third, the price, and then you add that product to the price. Oh, this local variable will have to also go outside. When you put it in a try catch, you have to just put them low, like every method should be able to use it. Not every method, in the same method. Okay, so here. So the try catch is also there. Just in case you want to just copy and paste in your exam, you should be good. Okay, so this, anything that you have declared inside has to just be declared once outside. There, and then remove it from here. Okay. So we've already done this last week. Therefore, I gave you this code ready-made. All it is doing is it is reading from the file. What is new for you that you didn't do last time is one line has more than one piece of data. Last week, you did one piece, one of data, one piece, one of data. So I'm putting 3 in a line. I'm splitting it on the pipe. When you split it, it will create 3 columns. The first column is your code. The second is your description. The third is your price, and you add it to your list. And if everything goes well, you return that list to whoever called this method, and this method is called get products. So you have a get products methods, which is returning you all that is in the file, and there is a save products method, which is saving it. What doesn't it like? Text in is a, there it is, text in. Why doesn't it like it? Try. Is that the end of the try? No, doesn't look like. Okay, so somewhere try is missing. Oh God, that's what happens when you don't do things properly. That's your try. Oh, now it is wrong. It wasn't required. Okay, so that's your while. That's your try. That's your, oh, why doesn't it like this? It says local variable, use of unassigned variable. Oh, if, now it will be okay. If text in is not equal to null, then close it. It still doesn't like it. Okay, so it's a local variable. So all it wants is before you close it, there it is. I should be okay now. Okay, good. It was just saying I can't close something if it is not null. So it is a local variable. I assigned it a value of null. And now it is fine. Right? So all I've done is I've just put it in try catch. That's all I did. So that when you see it for the exam, at least you have it. And I haven't done much. I've only written one try catch, which is good enough. So I'll put this in try catch. So you have everything from me. And then in try catch, this is the end of try. I put a catch here. I'm only catching IO exception. That's all I'm doing for now. But at least you know how to do it is the biggest thing. And then this I'll put it in finally. Remember, we always said always close your files before leaving it. And always check before closing it that you can close them. And it is again saying the same thing because I haven't initialized it to null. So please ensure, and I won't ask more of you just because I know time will be limited, but this is how you do. At least ensure that there is one catch block, the catch IO exception, which will catch all kind of exceptions. There could be many. You'll say, how do I know which ones? Bring your mouse over it. See, I should have written all these catch blocks. I should have written these two catch blocks also. So anywhere, whatever method it is throwing, so I just wrote at least one I wrote an empty catch for the IO exception, which will catch all kind of exceptions. And I'll just give it a name here, and I'll just put a message box here. So take your exception, show its message, and then in the title bar, you can say input output error. Like what else can I say when my catch blocks are so poor? Put an OK button. It doesn't like something. Message box.show, it doesn't. Oh, system.forms is not there. That's why it's not happening. You're so used to assume that it's there that maybe information, whatever. Okay, so at least have one try catch block. And I'll kind of take the same thing and then no empty catches, at least give some information in it. Show me the message at least. There. So now this class is ready. So this class has two methods. The get products are getting it and the save products are saving it. That's all you need to kind of understand. So that when I use it now here, so I should know how to use them. Okay, so let's use it. Okay, so what did you do? So we are back to now, how do we save? Okay, we are back to how do we save? Where are you? Okay, not you, this one. Main form, where are you? Okay, there. Okay, so when the form loads up, what do you want to do? You want to populate your list with the elements, all your products, and you want to go ahead with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my products, the list that I had, and I'm going to call that static method that I just wrote. Not you, product DB. There it is. Okay, so when the program loads, the list box will be populated with the products. And this method is doing it. So please pay attention to how it does it when you kind of do it. And then I'm going to fill up this. I'm going to write this myself. I'm going to fill this product list box myself. So that's reading it and returning the list, and I'll fill it. Now what is this? We'll fill it up. We'll generate this method. Okay. So when this form loads, it will get all the products from your file, and then it will fill up your list box. And how to fill up the list box is not so tough at all. Take your list products, take your items, clear them. So clear your list. And then now you already have your, just use a for each loop to go through your list, which is called products. And just keep, oops, this is C# in. And then just keep adding to your list. And the list was called list products dot items dot add. And add your product. So when the form loads, the contents of the file are read and are put into the list box. You'll say, how are they read? I just showed you that method. I provided it to you just because we've done it before. This is how it is read. The file is opened. After the file is opened, you use the peek method. You read one record at a time. You split it on the pipeline. You put it in an array. You add it to a list, this list, and you return that list. Right? So reading from a file and saving into a file, you have to know for your exam. And it's right here. So please take some time to read it. And if you have any questions, you can always ask me anytime you want.
What was like a request, you have a question about the file access?
The file access is the read, write, and read, write.
Yeah, what's
The default is read write. Yep, it was on your PowerPoint. I had put my notes there for you guys. Though I expect you to look for them. If you don't have the book, which is not compulsory, you can always Google it, but I did put that information in my modified files. Okay, so that's load. Okay, so that's the load and that's the save. What is the second button that remains? Come back to your design. So we were writing on, let's see if we've completed that. Did we complete add product? No, we haven't. Okay, so let's come back here. So the new form will be shown. The dialog box will be shown. You will get the new product. When you get the new product and it is not equal to null, you will add it to the list. So use the add method to the list. That's your list. Add the product. It gets added to your list. Also add it to your, now call that product DB save products method, which is saving into a file. So every time you add a record, it goes back to the file. Right? I mean, as I said, you could have improved it, but I'm doing it with every product. You'll say, why do we keep doing it? Why don't we do it when the user exits the code? You could have done it. But every time you add something, I make a change in my file so that it's always consistent. Right? And then also I fill the box again. So my add, every time you add a record is refreshing the list box also, and it is also refreshing the file. So the file changes with every record you add. This can be avoided.
Is it the auto-generated method, like the
No, I wrote it. I just wrote it here. All I did was I read it from, I clear my list, I read from the list, and I put it back in my, I populate it, right? That's what I do. I do it. I fill it up. I fill the products. But I'm doing it with every record that you kind of add or delete. I'll do it every time. Okay? So the fill product list box is reading it from the list. It's reading from the list and adding it to the list box. I do it myself. And then the last one. Hopefully it's the last one. What happens in delete? What do you want to do in delete logically? User chooses a record, says delete. Confirm from the user yes. Remove it from the list box. Remove it from the file. Again, as I said, I'm doing it every add and delete. I'm making a change in my file also. You could have just added another button here, and then you could have said, or in exit. Anytime you exit, you could have said, oh, I'm exiting. Let me do everything. And you could have done it only at one go. Both things are okay. The only problem is that while the program is running, your file is inconsistent with what is showing on your form. When the program closes, the file is updated. So the choice is yours. I'm doing it with every record that I delete or add. I keep my file consistent. So out of the blue, if someone comes and says, or some other program is using my file is always consistent, always. So there is a drawback that this operation is happening every time, but the advantage is my file is always accurate. I'm not waiting my application to finish before I update my file. So with every record I add and with every record I delete, I update my file. Okay. So now when you delete, all you have to do is, okay, which one did you delete? So let me get that position from the list box. So from the list box, get the selected index. Right? From the list box, get the selected index. So you chose something from the list box. And then, of course, if I is not equal to 1, you can't do anything. So check. If I is not equal to -1, that means you selected something. Otherwise, you can't delete anything. Right? So selected index is what? What did you select from the list box? And if it is not equal to 1, I'm going to ask the user. I'm going to confirm. Before deletion, you always confirm. And you can always give the user, please select something before deleting. That can always come. Are you sure you want to delete this product? Or you can just kind of, you don't have to make a big sentence. You can sure you want to delete this product. So you always ask, right? Now, since this is a question, Now the title could be any good one. I've set confirm delete as my title. Now, since this is a question and the answer can be yes or no, please don't put an OK button. Put a yes, no, try, or you can even say cancel. Put a yes, no, cancel button, right? And then the icon depends on you, but a good one would be the question one, right? And if you like, you can make your yes to be your, or no or cancel to be your default button, whatever you like. If you want no to be your default button, change this button 1 to button 2. You'll say what is 1, 2, and 3? Yes, no, cancel. That's how they go. Yes, no, cancel. Okay. Kind of. I mean, you don't have to remember them, but that's yes is 1, no is, and cancel is 3. Okay. So if the user says yes, I want to delete it. So if the confirm says yes, that means the user wants to delete it. Then delete it. What will you do? Same thing again. You will remove it from your display list box. You will also remove it from your list and you will put that list back onto your file. So as I said, every add or delete that I am doing, I'm deleting it. Okay, I'm doing it also there. Okay, so now how do I delete it? Okay, so if the person says yes, few things to be done. Now you have chosen an I. If you have chosen an I need to get that product out. Keep in mind, my list box and my list are in unison. Whatever is showing in my list box, that position is also the position of my record in my list, the list I'm using here. So I need that position. And now it's a simple remove. Now it's not a big thing. So if the confirm is yes, take your list and remove from the list. You can even say remove at I. I don't think I need this. I have the position. I can just remove it from I. Yeah, I have to use items. Yeah, but instead of remove, I can also say remove at also. Yeah, then I can just say I don't need the products I. Now just think, what if that list was sorted? Then it would create a problem. Then it's much more work. Let's leave that alone for now. I could keep my list sorted also, but then there is more work. That means my list, if the contents of my list box are sorted, how do I sort my list? Because list doesn't have only basic data type. It is an object. Okay, I'll stick with remove at and no sorting for now. So you can do this. It doesn't like this. Why? Oh, this is my, oh, sorry. Yeah, this is my normal list. What you were saying was from my list product there in items. Okay, now is there a remove method there? Or you know what I can do? Why am I even bothering this? Why am I bothering to do this? I have to save it anyway back to my file. And I have to fill in again. So automatically it will also be save products. Oh, it needs the list. Okay. I mean, I can remove it from the list but this is saving it and populating it again, so it automatically gets removed. I mean, why do it? Because this will do it. Now I've used an I here, so I don't need this product at all. If I said remove, remember there is a remove method also. If I say remove, then I need that product. So you can choose whatever you like. Okay. If I need remove method, then I'll go like this. Then I need, oh, not UP, small p. So you can choose whatever you like. Of course, the remove at is easier. The only problem with remove at is if I haven't done it, but if my list box is sorted, then the position there necessarily won't match the position in my list. Then there is more work there. How can I do that? Think about it for a minute. That is sorted. I get the I get the item. Then I'll have to search for that product. Oh, I'll have to write a search method in my product class. Search for it, get to it, and then remove it. It can be done. I mean, I can make my list box in sorted order. I mean, it's not It's up to you. Now the main thing is, does it work? Oh, else. Where are you? If. Else tell the user that he must or she must select something before deleting it. So never ever leave the right. So never always say what's going on. So the deletion is unsuccessful or unsuccessful delete. And of course the message box OK button. And of course the information. This is just an information, right? It's not an error. You're just informing the user that it couldn't be deleted. It was unsuccessful. Because you didn't choose anything. So how can you delete something? So this is just a information. So if the user did not choose anything, please see that you do it. And the only one that is left is exit, which is the easiest one. So we'll kind of go application.close. Now, if you wanted to do more stuff, remember form closing can always be done. Actually, I should write a form closing. My files were opened and closed. I should always close my files in my form closing. I've always said, whenever you use files, see that files are always closed in your. I have done it in Finally already, but it's always a good idea to close files. Right? Now, the only thing that I haven't done, which I won't be able to do, is the sorting, which is not a big deal. Okay, let's see if it works. Thank you for having that patience. Give me just 2 minutes and I'll show you it works. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Then you write it, you can make mistakes. So I should be able to add a product. I should be able. So now when it starts, there is nothing. My file is empty. Let's add a product. Okay, so let's go 1, 2, 3, 4. Description is a laptop and the price is $50. Save. Uh-oh, invalid cast. Unable to cast object of type text box to type convertible. Oh. Okay, so something is wrong. What is wrong? Think about it. When I created a product, it didn't like it.
You're not getting the tax of the tax price.
Thank you. That was quick. Right. I didn't get the text, so how will I convert it? There we go. I wrote the text in the other two and didn't in the price, right? But if you make a mistake, you make a mistake. So I'm seeing if it works, and then of course all that error messages should work. That the validation should work. So as soon as I do this and I say save, there it is. Oh, something is wrong. Okay. So something is not coming up properly in my list. Yeah, this is okay. I understand that, but the name is not good. Okay, so now what? What could I have done wrong? Something is wrong here itself. The product, return product. Something is wrong in the product because you see it had an odd thing. Give me 1 minute, guys. I don't want to leave you because I won't see you again. So something in my product class. Let's look at the product class. Get display text. I haven't used it. Price is okay. Description is okay. Where could I be going wrong? Add. Create a new form. Show it. Get the new product. If the product is not null, add it. Save it and fill it. Where could I be going wrong? So the product is being created. There's nothing. Get display text. Get display text. Okay, get display text. That's what is displaying it, right? What's wrong here? That's what is not working properly. I didn't do anything here. This was a file that was already given to me. So let's do the writing. Writing. Somewhere I'm doing something wrong because it's not coming out pretty. So where is the pretty thing? The pretty thing is missing somewhere. The fill product here.
You're actually adding the objects to the real
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Not displaying.
Not displaying it. I'm not displaying it. So the display is in the product one. Okay, here it is. So I've added the product. Yep, there. That's what is missing, right? Okay, so what do you want to use it with? Tab character. So the product is being added. It is just not being displayed properly. So that was missing. So where you add it, your fill product list box, pick up one at a time from the list and put it in the list, and please display it properly. The displaying was, so things were being, so, I mean, you have, it's, programmers are always at fault. Okay, so let's add a product. 1, 2, 3, 4. Laptop. $50, not 55. At least give it something, $750. And it's a decimal. You can even go whatever. Oh, price was only between 750 and 500. Okay, sorry about that. I said the range was 500. There it is, right? Now you can add as many products as you want. So if I've already shown you, if you try to save something, it will say code is a required field, cannot be left blank. Okay, so I haven't checked that it is not duplicate. If I try to do it again, it will say description. See, notice how neat it is now. The validator method is working. So description, let's call it a mouse. Price, we've already checked. It cannot be negative. We already had that problem. So it must be greater than 0 and less than 500. So a mouse is usually $50, right? Let's save it. Perfect, works. If you try to do delete with something, it will say cannot be deleted. Take it and delete it. And yes, say yes. And if you exit and you open up your Solution Explorer and just refresh it and go to that file, there it is, right there. See, so everything is seamlessly kind of talking to each other. Because I deleted the mouse. I deleted it. It will work. So you try it again. So now when you open it, only the laptop should show here. When you add a product and you add a mouse, I deleted it. Believe me. It will say yes. It will. It will work perfectly fine. So the main aim was here to show you the product class and the validator class, and see how neat and clean it is. So the validator is not too good a class because I gave it 500, but that was me doing it, right? I said that the minimum value is this much and the maximum value is 500. That was me doing it when I passed it.
What was that the product, like you pass the get product method in
The get product is in the DB. The get products is getting the contents of the file.
but you call product maybe somewhere else.
Oh, to save them. When I put something, I save it here. There is a save products method. So you're reading from file, you're writing to the file. And where is that 500 thing? Where should I change it? Where was that 500? No, not in the, yeah, but where is that code? Where is it saying it? The value should be 500 only. Let's see. Form main, new product?
Yeah.
No, in the ad?
We could save.
Did I give a limit here?
No,
No, not in this one.
When you click save, the save button.
The save button.
Yeah.
Okay. Not you. Oh, there it is, 500. Yeah, of course you have to kind of decide, like I decided it, which was too low, but again, I'm using magic numbers, but that's it. I mean, I'm just changing it to 1500. Anything else that could have been, I mean, of course, you shouldn't be using magic numbers, but logically it is working. So concentrate on this example. Okay. I've done working with decimals. I'll ask you integers. So what will you have to do? You'll have to just add a method called isInteger. I mean, you can call it whatever you like, but you'll have to change the isDecimal. The range, I'm working with 0 to 1500. I could say, oh, marks of my student can lie only between 0 and 50. I could be giving you temperatures like you've done your, like temperatures can be negative and positive. I'll say they can range from -50 to +50 in Canada. You know what I mean? So concentrate here. So learn how to create a validator class. I've given it to you. Learn how to create another class. I've done products. Maybe I'll say students. student name and student marks. Put them in a file, take them out of a file. Calculate the average, calculate the maximum, calculate the minimum. Job done. Show it on a form. Right? So concentrate on this last classwork for your exam. Okay, and I'll make something similar but different. You know what I mean? Like you have the knack, you have the code. Instead of his decimal is integer. Instead of putting 3 things in the file, maybe 5 things in a file. Instead of the pipe character, maybe comma. You know what I mean? All you have to do is how to read from a file, how to write to a file. That's it. So reading from a file, writing to a file, showing it on the screen, not much. So just concentrate on this example and what you've done last week on files, and you should be good. Because that's the only new thing you have done. Come again? Yep, I can give you a rough picture. I won't ask much. So was there anything very pretty in my forms? No. I don't know whether I would like to give this to you or I'll say just do it, but maybe I'll just say this is what I want as output. So show the student and the student marks here, and then maybe show the average, the total, highest mark and lowest mark. That's it. Okay. So concentrate on this. Okay. That's what your job will be. All this is on GitHub. So that's what you will prepare for your final exam. Okay. So I know it's a lot to take in one class, but take your time. You have time. Take your time. Come back if you want to ask me anything. I'm here till Friday. I'm back again the week after Christmas. Email me and I'll set up a time if you need me. Okay. Otherwise, if you know what's going on, you should be good. And I'll only think about the sorting that I was thinking about. I'll do that. Thank you for your patience, guys. Thank you so much. I know I was hurrying you, but